I, Adam, 27-year-old male, have been living with my girlfriend Stacy, 24-year-old female, for 3 years. We moved into my apartment after dating for 1 year, and we have a pretty good relationship despite a few ups and downs. We had placed some boundaries about my female friends and her male friends, and we always respected them. I work as a sales manager at a small company. Stacy works as a customer service agent at a real estate company. Recently, she became friends with her coworker David, the gay friend, and has been hanging out with him after work quite often. She said since he is gay, he is an exception to our boundaries. At first, I didn't care. One day, when we were on a dinner date, we saw David at the same restaurant. She called out his name and asked him to join us. I was uncomfortable with a person I didn't know joining our dinner date, but I didn't want to embarrass her, so I kept quiet. However, here is the thing. Nothing about his attitude or talking style felt like he was gay. He was complimenting her dress, talking about her hair, making remarks about her weight loss, and how she looked even more beautiful. Now, I am not stereotyping, but it genuinely felt like he was flirting heavily, and it was making me very uncomfortable. The worst part was Stacy saw my reaction, but didn't care and continued to talk with him. It felt like those two were on a date, and I was the third wheel. After the date, I told Stacy how I felt, and she laughed it off, saying, "Oh baby, come on, he is gay. He wasn't flirting with me. Don't be so jealous." She told me there is nothing to worry about. Now, I trust her, but here is the thing. Most guys can detect another guy's intention easily. My gut feeling was telling me David wasn't gay and was trying to sleep with Stacy. His remarks, his eyes, all were very flirtatious. Despite my protests, Stacy continued to hang out with David and text with him. A few days later, when Stacy was in the shower, I saw a text on her phone. My inner voice won, and I opened the conversation. To summarize, there was no sign of her cheating, but the texts from David were again very flirtatious, and Stacy was encouraging him. I confronted her about the texts, and she screamed at me for touching her phone, even though she always goes through mine and I never complain. A few weeks went by, and we became a bit distant. Our intimacy had dropped to 1 to 2 times a week, and we barely talked or went out. I talked to a friend about it, and he said David was probably acting gay to sleep with her. It could be the same old, "I never felt like this with a woman before" method. One weekend, Stacy was busy getting ready to go shopping with her friends, and another text from David arrived, saying, "Meet you there in 30 minutes." My doubt took over me, and I started following her. She arrived at a mall and met only David, no one else. I started following them on foot. They were shopping normally for a while, and I started to feel bad for not believing her and following her. I felt like an insecure boyfriend. But it all went away when they entered the undergarments section. She chose a couple of bras and panties, and they both approached the changing area. She entered the changing room, and he stood at the front of it. She was trying on the underwear and showing him how they looked. The girl I loved was in her underwear, showing her body to another guy and asking him how they looked on her. At that moment, I started shaking and wanted to confront both of them, but I kept my cool and didn't want to cause a scene in a public area. When Stacy arrived later, I confronted her about it, and she started to scream at me, calling me insecure, lame, petty, and pathetic, and saying I never loved her and such. I didn't scream back and simply said, "I cannot accept another guy looking at you almost naked. It doesn't matter if he is gay, that is never acceptable behavior. It doesn't matter how close you are to him. You cannot show your half-naked body to him while you are in a relationship with me." She started screaming more, saying vile things and insulting me. I asked her to leave my apartment. She refused and kept screaming. I told her she needed to pack her things and leave within 48 hours, or I would call the police, and I left the apartment for the time being. My phone is now blowing up with her texts and calls. She is saying I should stop acting like a child and stop being insecure. She never once said sorry for her behavior or wanted to talk things out. I am not replying to any of those and kept the phone on silent. I'm currently staying with a friend now, and I am not planning to go back to her. Am I the idiot? Now, for an update. A lot of people are calling me an involuntary celibate and hateful. It was never my intent to stereotype or disrespect homosexual people. The things that raised concern for me are that he always sends flirtatious texts to her. It's either flirting or compliments or directly saying things like, "If I wasn't into men, I would definitely steal you from him," or "I would have been head over heels for you," or texts about our love life. And never once did I see a text of him talking about his love life. And showing your half-naked body in underwear is not something that usually happens in a platonic friendship. And it's not like I was the only one who placed boundaries. The same boundaries were placed by her as well, which I always respected. Yet somehow I am the one to blame for asking her to respect mine. Also, it's not like I didn't try to talk to her. The only time she talked about this matter normally was after our dinner date. After that, it was always screaming or insults and calling me insecure. She never even tried to talk, just screamed at me. And the insults continued in text after I left. Another update. No, I do not have the right or authority to allow anyone to do anything. Some of you are mentioning bikinis. I really hope you understand the difference between wearing a bikini in a public place and privately showing off your underwear to a specific person in a changing room. Big update. At first, I want to thank everyone for your support and kind words. First, to answer a couple of the comments. Spending quality time with her was never an issue in the 4 years of our relationship. I make decent money, and my dad also paid for college, so I had zero debt. We always travel once a year. Gone on road trips every couple of months, and weekend dates were very common. Watching her favorite shows and movies, I loved spending time with her, and I always preferred talking about things. I always tried my best to communicate with her about how she feels or what she wants, and I never got any indication from her that she may be unsatisfied. It's been almost 1.5 days since I posted, and a lot has happened since then. She contacted her friend group ranting about me and tried to talk them into forcing me and guilt me into taking her back. But her friends were decent people. One of her friends, Layla, contacted me and asked me to meet them at a bar to hear my side of the story. I told them what had happened, how it started, and what happened at the mall. They were shocked because Stacy told them a completely different story and purposely left out the part where she screamed at me every time I tried to talk to her about David. And she also left out the underwear trial part. She told them she was shopping with David, and I followed them and threw a tantrum when she returned home. But since they met me before, they were doubtful and wanted to know my side of the story. A couple of things also came to light after talking with them. Apparently, Stacy never introduced David to the friend group, and she rarely hung out with them in the last couple of weeks. So basically, I suspect she was spending time with David. After the conversation with her friends, her texts calmed down. Her friends confronted her about the half story and refused to help her. She just called me once and asked me to return home and talk with her in an angry voice. I refused and told her she lost her chance of talking things out. I simply don't want to continue this relationship, and she should move out as soon as possible. We had a joint bank account that we used to put small amounts of money into to spend during our trips. It had around a total of $6,000 left, $2,000 of her money and $4,000 of mine. I told her she could empty that account and use that to find another place to live, and then I hung up my phone. I haven't received any text from her after that. The money is still there, and I didn't get any notification of withdrawal yet. I just hope she understands and simply leaves, but if anything happens, I will update here. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot fully. You expressed a concern, and she ignored you. She wants access to your phone, but you cannot see hers. All I'm seeing is her treating you poorly. I think the situation with Dave is just the moment when you realize that she doesn't respect you. Comment 2. Haha. If my husband let his new homosexual best friend, who was sending him inappropriate text messages, see him in his underwear and ask for her opinion, after I expressed my discomfort, I would leave him in a heartbeat. Now for the update. I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was over, but 3 days after the whole blow-up, I get a text from her. She's asking to meet up. I didn't really want to, but part of me thought maybe we could clear things up. So I agreed and told her to meet me at this coffee shop near my apartment. It used to be our spot on weekends, and now it just feels like a place full of memories. She arrives looking different, like really different. Hair all tied back, dressed super casual. The first thing out of her mouth, how she's been crashing at her cousins since I kicked her out. I just listen as she goes on about wanting to talk about our relationship. She starts saying how David was just a friend, and right then I cut her off. I told her I didn't want to hear any more excuses. She then goes on about how her friends have been super supportive, and I just know they're the same ones who confronted her about the flirty texts. She tells me she never intended to hurt me, but honestly, I just felt zero sincerity coming from her. I pointed out those texts I'd found, the flirty ones, and told her how they crossed a line. She tried to shift the blame, saying I should have trusted her more. And I told her trust is earned by actions, not just words. The convo started getting heated. She raised her voice, and people at the nearby tables started looking over. I told her to chill out and that I was done arguing. She claims I'm being unfair, and I straight up asked her if she thinks all this is fair. We both sat in silence for a moment, not even wanting to look at each other. I decided I needed to leave, said I had stuff to do. As I'm getting up, she begs me to reconsider, but I just walked out. Later that night, I get a call from one of her friends. She tells me that Stacy's been saying I was controlling. I was furious. I texted Stacy to meet again, but this time at her cousin's place. She was okay with that, so I braced myself for round 2. When we met, I brought up the rumors and called them what they were. Damaging. She denied everything, but I had screenshots from her friends showing she was lying. Things got really tense as I emphasized how important honesty is. She tried to play the victim card, saying she felt trapped and misunderstood. I shot back that I was the one who'd been wronged here and that I deserved some basic respect. Out of nowhere, she tells me she's been thinking of moving back to her hometown. I asked her if she was serious about leaving, and she just nodded. Before I could even react, she starts saying our friendship has crossed a line. We got into it about David, and I told her to stop using him as an excuse for everything. She insists he's just a friend, and I called her out for the inconsistency. We both stood up, the conversation escalating, and I told her to get out of my life. She storms out. A few days later, I get a message from her cousin saying she'd moved out. Finally, some peace and quiet. I'm done with all this drama. I just want to focus on my own life now. I'm planning a weekend trip with some friends, and honestly, I can't wait. Edit. After this meeting, she moved out within a week. I found out from her cousin that she moved back in with her parents. I have not heard from her since then. I have blocked her on all platforms. Things are much better now, and I am focused on myself. Thank you for the support. Am I the idiot for refusing to support my cheating ex-husband after he drained my savings and demanded half my house? Background: we met and were friends before getting together. We moved into my house and had separate bank accounts. My income paid for everything related to the house, rates, utilities, maintenance, etc. He said he could live with his parents for free and that wouldn't change my spending. I paid for all of our food and my own expenses. Any extra money I had went towards the mortgage. His money went on his personal spending and fun activities for himself. For any trips or dining out, we paid for our own things. I got sick, life-threateningly sick. I needed support to do most things. He went off the rails. I only saw him for a couple of hours every few days. One day, he came home and left my laptop open on his email with one particular email open that proved his infidelity. The next time he came home, I confronted him and asked him to leave, which he did. We officially separated, and I found out that while I was sick, he had spent my entire mortgage savings. He had used my laptop and phone to change passwords. After moving back in with his parents, he was diagnosed with a mental illness. A few months later, he demanded I sell the house and give him half of the money. I refused. I am being called an awful person because it was a mental illness causing his behavior. Am I the antagonist? To add, thank you to everyone who responded. I am adding some information to answer questions. 1. We were married, now divorced. 2. He definitely has a mental illness. He spent months in a psychiatric ward getting treatment. He is considered permanently disabled due to the illness. 3. I am not in the USA, so your laws don't apply. Here, in divorce, everything is usually split 50-50 unless there is evidence. I had evidence that all the payments were from me. I ended up only having to pay him a relatively small amount due to that. However, I had to sell some things to pay him that amount because I didn't have anything in my bank account. The post was not about going nuclear or getting revenge. The courts decided the finances. 4. To the people saying this is fake, all I can say is that I wish it were. At the time, I didn't feel like I was being used. It was my house, and I was in love. 5. The divorce was a few years ago. I have somewhat recovered from my illness, but I will never be 100%. Thank you so much to those who asked about my health. I have moved on and am now married to a wonderful man who met me when I was still pretty sick. He loves me, even if I am a bit of a dud. 6. The people calling me an awful person are his relatives and a few of my former friends. They say I should have forgiven him and taken him back and that I should give him money because he is not able to work. All these people are no longer in my life. 7. This post was triggered by a recent message from a former friend calling me an awful person for abandoning him when he needed me. That person was informed of the truth and then blocked. The fact that people still think I'm an awful person is pretty upsetting. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the jerk. Are you pressing charges for the stolen money? How could he possibly be owed anything when he didn't contribute a dime to the house? I wish you had more self-confidence and had him sign a lease and pay rent. He owes you for housing him. He should be talking to the police and lawyers, not you. Who is calling you a jerk? The mentally ill guy who robbed you? His enablers? Why would you care about their opinion of you? Comment 2. Not the jerk, but what are you doing? Call the police and the bank. He fraudulently gained access to your laptop, your bank accounts, and stole your money. He should be charged, paying you back, and maybe doing time for stealing what presumably was thousands of dollars. Now for the update. I'm back with an update on the ex and that whole situation. Thanks for all your support. I really appreciate it. So a couple of days after the last post, I got a call from my aunt. She told me that my ex had been admitted to a mental health facility. Apparently, he was acting all kinds of erratic. I had a family dinner for my parents' anniversary the other night. This whole situation came up then. My brother Jake casually brought it up and asked how I was doing, as if he actually cared. When he brought it up, he also said that our parents were worried about how the family would be perceived because of my actions. Like, excuse me, I was the one getting cheated on. Why is this my fault? My sister Kate chimed in, suggesting maybe I should reach out and offer some support. I was like, no, not doing that. They both kept trying to get me to help with all this, and I just kept asking why. Jake said something about family sticking together, and I told him my ex wasn't family anymore. I found myself on the defensive and explaining why I felt it was better to maintain distance. I mean, come on. I was the one who was wronged here. Days later, I got this message from my ex's mom asking to meet for coffee. I did not want to do it, but I was kind of curious about what she wanted to say. So I agreed. We met at this coffee shop, and she started off by telling me how distressed she was about her son's condition. Then she asked me for help. Like what? I was just as shocked as you are. She handed me a letter her son had written during his stay at the facility. After that meeting, I went home and shared the letter with my partner. He read it and encouraged me to consider my ex's state. We talked about potentially reaching out and weighed the possible outcomes. It was a lot to think about, to be honest. A few days later, I got a call from my ex, and he was surprisingly calm and articulate. During the conversation, he mentioned wanting to meet in person to discuss his recovery. I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet at a local coffee shop. I wanted to see the progress he claimed to have made. When we met, he seemed different. He was more composed and actually open about his feelings. I was kind of shocked, to be honest. We had this conversation about what he wanted to do with his life, and he was just so different. But then, just as we were wrapping things up, he told me he had taken steps to regain access to the mortgage savings he had drained. He explained that he intended to pay me back, showing me his commitment to making amends. Like, wow. We parted ways and I went home in a daze. My ex later sent me a message confirming he had started the process of reimbursement. I decided to keep my distance, focusing on my new life while being cautious about my ex's promises. I mean, can you blame me? Edit. My ex did successfully return all the drained money, which was a huge relief. We haven't spoken since, just an update. Am I the idiot for calling out my cousin for sabotaging my food at a family event? Some background. I have a terrible relationship with most of my family. I speak with 2 out of 25 cousins, have no contact with my siblings, and have low contact with my mother. I am the scapegoat and just preferred to wash my hands of trying to repair relationships that are irreparable. All my life, I've been described as a picky eater, a hypochondriac, and someone who seeks attention. I make up food allergies and pretend I'm sick for attention. I've been trying for most of my adult life to find out why I develop food intolerances and have random reactions to foods I've never had reactions to. This past year, I was diagnosed with mast cell activation syndrome, which means I have random reactions to things. Some are predictable: dust, grass, meat. Others, I have no idea: cilantro, certain fruits and vegetables, etc. I've been to the emergency room for anaphylaxis, but I'm not technically allergic. So I avoid foods at potlucks, and I always bring my own plate. I went to a baby shower today and was very surprised to see a cousin named Jenny there. I had no idea Jenny knew the mother-to-be, Heather. Dawn is Heather's sister, my next-door neighbor, and Dawn is my emergency contact who has taken me to the emergency room 3 times this year alone. Dawn prepared the food, knows all my triggers, and had set aside a certain number of friendly foods just for me. Jenny started in immediately about, "Oh, I see this is still going on, still pretending you're allergic to get attention. This is why no one in the family invites you anywhere." Dawn was very uncomfortable, and so were some of the other people. Dawn stated she made several accommodating items: gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan, dairy-free, etc. But my cousin kept going. Heather and her spouse were also getting upset. Please keep in mind, they all work in medicine, but are not doctors. I finally just moved away from the conversation and was later speaking to Heather about the new medication I'm on that is helping tremendously with my reactions. I was so tempted to try the chicken and waffles, but I didn't want to accidentally have a medical emergency, and we all laughed. Dawn caught Jenny fussing with the food that Dawn had made for me and asked what she was doing. Jenny stated nothing, but now I was afraid to eat anything. In the past, my family has found it hilarious to put things in my food that they knew I said I couldn't eat to see if I noticed. Again, sometimes I have a reaction, sometimes I don't, so I just avoid foods that have ever given me a reaction. Dawn found a slice of strawberry that had been hidden in the salad prepared for me. She, of course, knew she hadn't placed it there and confronted Jenny. Jenny laughed it off. This is why I cut off contact with my family. Strawberries are one of the foods that will definitely give me a reaction and have sent me to the emergency room in the past. Dawn said that could be considered attack if I'd eaten and had a reaction, and I would have been within my rights to press charges. At that time, it was hypothetical because I obviously would not eat any of the food prepared especially for me. And Jenny was like, she would never. We're family. And I said I definitely would if anyone purposely tricked me into eating food that would make me go to the emergency room. Heather's spouse asked Jenny to leave. I was very apologetic, and honestly, my family sucks. Now for an update. By the time I got home, Jenny, who I am not friends with on social media, posted a Facebook story, but it was full of misinformation, claiming that she said she'd even call the cops on Grandma. One of the 2 cousins sent me screenshots, and of course, I'm being vilified and I'm being called the antagonist. My siblings are all over how horrible I am, but I don't think I'm in the wrong. Jenny purposely messed with my food to try and prove something which could have caused a serious medical reaction. Yes, I had an EpiPen, but sometimes I need more than one. With the new medication, it's possible I won't even have a reaction, but I feel it's my choice to decide when or if I'm willing to tempt it. So, am I the antagonist? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the a-hole. But you cut these people off for a reason, which was this exact reason. Why does it matter what they are saying? You are already no contact with them, so they cannot actually do anything to you or your reputation. Tell your two cousins who are in contact that you do not want to hear about or see it. As far as you are concerned, those people do not exist. If they do not listen, they can go in timeout too. Comment 2. You cannot press charges. That is something only police and district attorneys can do. What you can do is file a complaint with the police, after which they will make a decision about pressing charges. In your case, it is unlikely to happen. Now, for the update, a couple of days after the baby shower, I got a group text from family about a holiday dinner at my parents' place. I just stared at it for a good while. I knew there would be all this tension and awkwardness because of Jenny's behavior at the baby shower. I just wasn't sure if I was ready to deal with all that. But then Dawn texted me separately, asking me to come and promising she'd handle Jenny. I don't know why, but I felt like this was a chance to resolve some issues and actually support my parents. So I decided to go. On the day of the dinner, I got there early to help set up the table and do some prep work. The kitchen smelled amazing, like roasted turkey and all those baked goodies that make you feel at home. But then I saw Jenny just sitting there at the dining room table, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I felt like I was in some alternate universe. I tried to talk to other family members, but every conversation just felt so forced. You could feel the awkwardness, honestly. Once dinner started, we began talking about holiday plans. Everyone was sharing their upcoming trips and how they were going to celebrate the holidays. Everything was going fine until Jenny decided to make a comment about how I couldn't travel because of my, in her words, fake allergies. Some people laughed uncomfortably, and I just sat there, stunned. But thankfully, Dawn spoke up right away, defending me and reminding everyone that my condition is serious. That moment was a relief, but honestly, I could feel the chaos brewing. As dinner went on, I accidentally spilled some cranberry sauce on Jenny's dress while passing food. I mean, it was an accident, but she just exploded, acting like I did it on purpose. I can't even explain how dramatic this girl is. Like, come on, it's a little cranberry sauce, not acid. But then some of my siblings took sides, and it just turned into a whole mess. Some were defending me, and some were backing Jenny, and it was just chaos at the table. After dinner, I stepped outside for some fresh air because I felt really overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. Dawn followed me out there, and she was just as frustrated with Jenny's behavior as I was. But then all of a sudden, Jenny comes outside looking super upset and confronts Dawn about defending me. The argument just escalated, and family members started coming outside to see what was going on. I tried to mediate a little, but Jenny just wouldn't listen. She stormed off, saying she didn't want to be around toxic people. So I went back inside and tried to salvage the evening, just engaging in light conversation with family members. Afterward, while cleaning up, I overheard my parents talking about the rift in the family and how they were going to approach the situation. They sounded concerned, which was nice, but I didn't expect them to have all the answers. A week later, I got a private message from a family member who had been quiet during the dinner, expressing support. They told me they'd been following the whole thing on social media and were worried about all the misinformation being spread. So I decided to address it directly. I crafted this detailed post to clarify all the facts about my health and everything that had happened. It actually gained a lot of traction. More family members reached out to show support and shared their own experiences with misunderstandings. But Jenny, of course, didn't stop. She kept spreading her narrative, posting her version of events, and making even more accusations. Like, girl, read the room. Just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous, tensions reached a peak when the family planned a spring gathering, and I found out Jenny would be there. Dawn suggested we confront her together to settle things once and for all, but I just felt really apprehensive about the whole plan. So I talked to another family member I trust about how to handle the upcoming gathering. They told me to focus on my own well-being and to be cautious when approaching the situation. Honestly, I really appreciated that. At the spring gathering, the atmosphere was just so tense. Walking into the house and seeing Jenny already there with her friends was something else. Conversations immediately turned to me, with Jenny making these snide remarks that others overheard. Dawn took the lead and gathered everyone for a family discussion about all the recent drama. It was honestly a lot to process, and some family members were willing to work on communication, while others just stayed divided. It was a step in the right direction, I guess, but there's still a long way to go for this family. Edit. After the dinner, I received messages from some family members who wanted to clear the air and discuss what happened. We agreed to meet individually, and it helped me understand their perspectives better. It was a long process, but it felt good to have some honest conversations. Dawn and I are doing well, and she's been my biggest supporter through all this. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.